Yeah.
So we are live. I'm here with Lina. Lina, nice to see you.
Hi, David. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I like your hair. I mentioned it before we went live. Because I'm
Thank you. I
I'm
appreciate it.
I got a lot of hair, but it's not as nice as it used to be when I was young. When you're young, you're 24, right?
Yes.
When you're young, it has the curls, or do you curl it, or is it just naturally?
It's natural. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. I just brush it.
that's nice. That's nice.
How long is yours? I can see a
Down
man
to
bun.
my down to
Yeah.
my lower back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It's just force of habit. I keep it long because that's the way my wife. I was going to say my life, but yeah, she's my life and my wife. She likes it long, so I keep it long.
Gotcha.
And I wash my hair once a week, and my head gets really itchy. And tomorrow is my hair washing day. So if you see me scratching my head, it's because I am too lazy to wash my hair. But not to gross you out or anything like that. But it's just I don't I'm a low maintenance guy, so I don't want to go to the barber. I don't want to get the mani pedi. Uh, you seem like the type that likes the pampering and all the full works. Am I right?
Well, I don't like spending the money on it, so we're in agreement there.
But if you had the money, you'd pamper yourself with all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
So let's get into something just slightly more serious, which is your worldview. And before we get into it, like it'd be fun to talk about metaphysics with you, and we will do that. But you're a human being, and I love and respect you because you're a human being first and foremost. Okay, so I want to know, who are you? Where do you come from? What kind of family were you raised in? Were you raised religious, ultra extreme religious, and then you rebelled, or were you raised in an atheist home? Just talk a little bit about your background and fill us in a little bit, please.
Yeah, totally. So, like you said, I'm 24 years old. I was born and raised in the Chicago area, uh, suburbs of Chicago. I was going to Catholic school. I think was the first school I went to up until I think second or third grade,
Ah,
and then I switched to. It was kind of an interesting school. It was a mix between um, K through 12, or not through 12, K through 8. So they had up through middle school basically all together with the high schoolers. Um, so my mom was a Christian. My dad wasn't. And that was definitely a dynamic. So I suppose you could say I'm uh, the result of that struggle, at least in my worldview and in my history. Religion's been a big theme.
what about the siblings? What have you got any?
I do, yeah. I have an older sister, 2 years older. Her name's Ariana. And then we moved here to California, to SoCal, right before freshman year of high school for me.
Okay.
So I went to high school here, graduated, went to Arizona State University for a couple of years, um, dropped out, and and then a few years passed, then COVID happened, and then here we are.
What's your I'm guessing you're very left on the political spectrum. So you rolled with the punches with COVID and just obeyed the government like a good person, good citizen. Am I right or am I wrong?
I have no idea what that means.
Well, did you go with the flow? Okay, gotta wear the mask, social distance, and get the jab and everything.
Well, so I worked at PetSmart when when everyone kind of first found out about it here. So I was on the front line, seeing the
PetSmart?
response to it. Yeah, yeah, I was a cashier star, and then I did dog bathing for a little bit.
Oh boy, that sounds chaotic. The pet bathing part, the dogs wagging their
It was fun.
tails.
Yeah,
They
I
started.
mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
The main thing that I was upset by was the company response to COVID, but
Okay.
uh,
Elaborate.
no surprise there. Oh, well, just profit over people. It's a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they've got us with the stores open. It's just insanity.
Okay, okay. Because they're big, they got to stay open, right?
Well, no, they don't. I mean, they could have closed every single storefront and made all of their sales online, but they chose not to.
Well, they were allowed to be open because a lot of mom and pops businesses were forcibly
Right,
shut
they put
down.
money over profit. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So hold on now. What is
Or money over, they put profit over people, rather.
What just very briefly, what kind of life track is your older sister on in terms of religion and worldview? Do you have any idea?
I believe she's still a devout Christian,
Okay.
as well as my mom. As far as I can tell, they're both non-denominational. So after Catholic school, I think it was around like fourth or fifth grade, we went to a mega church. So it was like one of the newer
Famous one?
evangelical. It was called Willow Creek. I don't know if you can look them up. They're in the Schaumburg area. But yeah, so I actually got pretty into it during middle school, going into high school. I went on a mission trip to Mississippi, helped people after Hurricane Katrina.
Cool.
And then right around like, I think 8th grade, I remember, my small group leader being like, hey, like now's the time to get serious about it, which I thought was funny because I'd always taken it pretty seriously up until that point. But I noticed that a lot of the other kids at the church, weren't as about it. And so I really wanted to, be a disciple for Christ and go out and evangelize. So
Cool.
I think it was like sophomore year of high school, I took an apologetics course. It was actually taught by my small group leader. So it was at my church, and I was really excited for it because I was like, finally, I'm going to be able to, talk to my dad, convince him, and I'm going to be able to have all these arguments for God. And now, I'm going to finally get that doubt off of my chest. And then I was super disappointed. So that kind of spurred me into looking into my worldview and questioning some of the more foundational beliefs that I hadn't questioned at that point. That led me to a lot of atheist content on YouTube. And then pretty much by the time I went to college, I was, considered myself an atheist. Went to college, had a lot of interactions with religious groups there. That was pretty fun. That kind of got me into the whole counter apologetics thing. Never started like my own like channel or anything because I just wasn't that into it. But I did have a group of friends that were really into philosophy, so we just kind of started doing that. And then, yeah, I mean, I can go on about a few other people that influenced me.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
We'll talk about that. Well, I was going to bring in some of the religious experiences that I've had and some of the people that I've listened to in trying to integrate that.
Tell us.
Well, so do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yes, of course. He's Canadian. I'm Canadian.
Okay, all right. Well, when he kind of got famous, I heard him through the atheist grapevine, and I was kind of more intrigued than what people were giving him credit for. So I looked into his stuff, and at the same time, I was kind of curious about like the esoterica, Gnostic sort of teachings, the Hermeticism and alchemy, these sorts of what came before what we consider to be good science and philosophy. Because I'm an anthropologist in a sense, like I'm curious about our origins. So yeah, I heard him talking about psychedelics, funnily enough, and there were some other people at ASU, of course, who were telling me about that stuff. One guy was like, you got to smoke DMT, you'll meet God for sure. And I was like, okay, sure thing, dude. I was pretty dismissive about it at first, but after Jordan Peterson said some things about it, I started looking into it because I was like, all right, let's see what this is about, and found a lot. There's actually surprisingly quite a connection between ritualized plant consumption of the psychedelic or psychotic varieties, psychoactive varieties, I should say. and religious practices. These things kind of go hand in hand in a lot of cultures. If you just read the oldest religious text we have, which is the Rig Vedas, they talk about preparing the soma. So I was kind of shocked by that at first, and it took me a long time of researching to see, just what religions were connected to this experience. But I was quite certain that there was a connection there, and then I had the fortune of actually being able to try it myself. So dropped acid 3 times, and on the second time, I had what they call a breakthrough experience. So then that led me reeling. I was kind of like, am I an atheist? Am I a theist? What the heck was that? And it's still one of the, you can't put your finger on what kind of experience that is. It's ineffable is definitely one of its main qualities, but it was an overflow of emotions. It was something very visceral and I guess some people would say spiritual.
Interesting. I've done THC. I had a very bad experience with THC, with the marijuana and hashish and stuff like that when I was young. I was 21. I was hallucinating on marijuana and hashish because I consumed so much, and it wasn't as strong back then as it is today. It wasn't. Okay, because I've been tweaking.
I disagree.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, so obviously there's more THC in it now, right? But when you look at how they would consume it, or people smoke it today, right?
Yeah.
And smoking it, burning, kills off 90% of it.
Okay, because I ate a lot.
Right. So the way that they would use the ancient way of doing it would be to make it into some sort of preservative, right? And then you just stuff your face with it, and then you would eat until you were going to throw it up, right? And then they tell you, okay, you're good, and then you go lie down, right, in the dark hut, and you would leave your body, and you would go on this incredible journey of a sort. Mm-hmm. I've never really messed with cannabis too much because I've read from the trip reports that it's one of the more intense psychedelics, actually, when you break through on it, and it's pretty hard to do that.
Yeah. It was not fun. It was not fun.
If you're a regular smoker.
No, I was never a regular smoker.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't recommend starting with that. I'm not condoning the use of drugs, by the way.
Of course.
I just want to put that out there.
Of course. It's legal in Canada to do these stupid drugs, right?
Yeah, and I mean, they're trying to integrate it into mental health, right? It's a cure for depression and anxiety. There's some studies with PTSD, with MDMA that's happening. Johns Hopkins and a few other universities here in the States.
Oh.
I think it's been dubbed the psychedelic renaissance right now because it's kind of like the hippie movement 2.0. It's sneaking back in through the doctor's office.
I want to give a shout out to, there are 3 people in the chat, 3 friends of mine, GC, Joe, and Pychris. Pychris says cannabis is amazing, at least in my experience. And I interviewed a guy today from Norway. I don't know if you saw that one, but he uses marijuana. It's illegal in Norway, but he uses it by his doctor's prescription for his mental health, for anxiety, and for these different sorts of things. I wouldn't want to say exactly what his issues are, but he has some sort of PTSD from a really traumatic, abusive father experience when he was 1 year old. Very interesting interview if anyone listening wants to check out this guy. So it is being used medicinally. It didn't really, I didn't enjoy it myself, but I did enjoy magic mushrooms, as they're called, psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
You tried it?
And they're all pretty similar. I mean, that's the one I've done the most. And that's the one that I've had the most difficult experiences on as well. So it's, people like to say that it's friendly to beginners and completely unforgiving to the experience.
Okay, good to know.
Every time I take it now, I have the same. I think it's a delusion, which is that I embody the idea of God in a sense. Like
Wow.
I look at the world as if I were looking at it from God's perspective.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that's because of the trip I already had, like the breakthrough experience is coloring all of these other experiences. Because when you get into a heightened state of suggestibility, you're prone to go back to the same narratives that you've already kind of been telling yourself.
Yeah, it's state-dependent memory also. State-dependent memory. I'm sure you've confronted this idea, right?
That it breaks down your ability to.
Well, have you ever met someone out of context? Let's say you and we meet on my channel and we chat and you come back time and time again and this is David from CVS podcast, da, 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 da. And then you go to the grocery store or the beach and I'm there and you're like, I say hello to you and you're like, what? Do I know you? Because I'm out of context. Right? So it's the same thing. I'm sure this has happened to you with a friend or a family member where it's like you always see them in the same context. It's like, this is the guy I go bowling with and I only see him in the bowling alley. And then when you see him somewhere else, it's like, what? So, but that's a really cheap example of context of the state-dependent memory. A better example would be like when you're a pro athlete and you're like in the zone and like the slopes for your descent on this challenging skiing challenge, whatever. And it's like, this is the space where you're connected to all the muscle memory and everything. So it's sort of like a state of mind, or like if you're, the victim of ritual sexual abuse or something like that, you compartmentalize different sort of modes of being. Allegedly, this is what I've heard. I have no experience with this, but like people get a certain set of memories that only come out in certain contexts. And trauma is a good way of compartmentalizing. And I live here in Montreal, Quebec, where we have the MK Ultra experiments that took place. I'm sure you're aware of those, right? Nasty stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've called out the CIA on the Digital Gnosis, his channel.
Oh, no
before,
way.
So yeah.
Do you know that guy?
I'm not a fan of the CIA. I've
Nathan.
only been on, so I was on once. Yeah, I'm quite a fan of his channel. I don't think we had a very productive conversation when I was on there.
Why?
The one I was on got removed because I think he played some UFC content, and they like flagged it. So it's not on the channel, sadly. But it was a good discussion about metaphysics and sort of the axioms that underlie.
I feel bad because I kind of alienated him. I debunked some of his 500 arguments against Christianity, and I guess I was a little bit too brutal on him, and he doesn't respond to my emails now. Either that or he's just too busy. He just doesn't care about me. But he was on my podcast twice, once as a Christian, then as an agnostic, and then I don't know how I discovered this 500 arguments against Christianity that he did with his friend, I'm sure you know the guy's name. I can't remember. James Fodor.
Jesus. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
The bad apologetics series that they do.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'm not like I don't follow their work, but I did a long sort of repetitive debunking of their 500 arguments against Christianity. But do you also know Brenda, who's been a guest of mine, transgender?
No,
Brenda,
I don't.
Because Brenda does talks with Rebekah and with Nathan Ormond, and I don't know if there's a scene like that you're part of online or whatever.
I know Rebekah. I just joined her channel like a couple weeks ago, I think.
Okay.
So like I'm pretty new to like actually like joining into discussion online.
Okay.
I've mostly just been like creeping in the comments and on some channels, but
what did you study?
I'm really not at ASU or
your highest level of education.
Engineering.
Did you complete it?
I didn't. No.
Are you planning on?
I'm not. No, I have no intention of going back to school.
That's what my dad did. My dad graduated from that and then got all the serious grown-up people jobs and all that sort of thing. I studied.
Yeah, I mean,
I studied applied physics, which is kind of like a slightly more scientific and less applied version of engineering. It's more a little bit more theory and stuff like that. But yeah, so you're more into the psychonautic exploration. Is that where your emphasis is now? Are you really serious about exploring reality and your mind and consciousness? Is that like your big thing, or is that a hobby while you wash dogs and get high?
Yeah, well, getting high is definitely a hobby. Yeah, so like I like doing a lot of things. I think everyone is curious about the world around them. Philosophy has definitely been a big part of my life. Like I said, I grew up as a Christian. I wanted to save my dad. I wanted to save my friends that weren't Christians. I was about it. I was really um, looking forward to hearing the arguments, being able to uh, to be smart, to be able, to be able to hold my ground against people who didn't agree. Um, and so, I think that that's still somewhat the case. I mean, I try and be a lot more just open-minded and receptive more than try and put out what my perspective is, because I'm not that smart.
Ah, good to be humble and good to be open, right? Uh, Now, where was I gonna go with this? Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you about your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Do you still love him, or did you ever love him, or did you love him and then stop loving him? Like, just tell me.
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely loved him. And obviously believed in him at that point. I would say I stopped believing him before I stopped loving him, curiously enough. Like I think for some atheists, maybe it's the other way around. Like maybe um,
Fall out of
there's like a
love.
lot of things that they don't like about it, or like there's a lot of inconsistencies or contradictions that they see, and so that leads to doubt. Um, for me, I think it was always just kind of doubt at the start, and I don't know if that was because I had, like I said, an atheist father. It wasn't really that he was an atheist; he just didn't care. Like honestly, I'm more annoyed at his attitude than my mom's, right? Because like my mom, she's fundamental, but at least she's willing to have a conversation. At least she knows what she believes and she can talk about it. Whereas my dad, it's like, who knows what he believes? He doesn't. It's of no interest to him. He doesn't like having philosophical conversations. A very down to earth sort of. And he's an electrical engineer too.
Ah, oh, okay.
My whole family is. My mom and my sister is. A
Wow.
bunch of yeah. Um. So where was I going with that?
Well, I mean, you're talking about connecting with your father, and it's a stereotypical thing anyway with the father, the distant father. We can't connect, and it's like hard communication is hard. Expressing emotions is difficult for a lot of these guys. I don't know how old he is. He's probably my age. I'm 52, so
A little bit older, yeah.
he's a little bit older. It would be fun though, to interview your mom or your sister if you don't mind inviting them onto that podcast. It would be great to interview them about their Christian faith.
Yeah,
It would be fun.
I'd love that. I don't know how up for that they'd be.
Okay.
Um,
Some people are
yeah,
shy.
so I've tried to have a dialogue. Like I said, like my mom's. I say she's willing to have a conversation, but we haven't had a conversation in a long time. So
Okay.
um,
But the relationship's
yeah, I
good
mean, it is. Yeah, yeah. It's just strained.
because faith.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to respect her when. So she studies the Bible like every week, right? She has her like weekly Bible study, and she goes to church every week. And I don't see how you can read the Bible that like. What are you studying? Like, how are you looking at it? Are we reading the same book is what I'm wondering. And I realize that that's after I've already like gotten out of that worldview, out of that mindset. And so I don't know what kind of like you were saying, compartmentalization or cognitive dissonance is going on there. Yeah, I try and have a lot of compassion for people because I don't know where they're at. I
You
don't know
could
what's
join
going
in.
on
You
in
could
their head.
join in. Is it Wednesday night or Sunday, or what do they do?
Their Bible study, I
Yeah,
think it's Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. Usually the Protestants do that. So you could just join in and say, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to just come along and eat my sandwich and listen to you guys." And it could be interesting because then you'll realize, wow, these people really care. They love God, they love neighbor, and they're good people. And okay, they may believe some things that I think is a bit of a stretch, to put it mildly, but they're not crazy. They're asking questions, they're trying to reason with some pretty paradoxical stuff in the holy texts. They're not stupid, okay? Well, maybe they are. Maybe they are stupid and crazy. I don't know. But you can go and find out at least.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, I don't think anyone's stupid unless you're actually retarded.
Yeah.
Like I think most people are pretty common sense, with it people. We just have yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to look at the world either way, right? Like, you can look at the world under a view of God existing, or you can look at the world without that lens. Well, some Christians, I think, struggle to do that. The ability to consider hypotheticals is one of the big factors in determining how fundamental someone is a lot of times. So yeah, going back to what we were talking about with the drugs, part of what they do, I think, is that they induce a willful suspension of disbelief, right? And I think that that's a healthy thing to do even when you're sober, when you're considering these different metaphysical perspectives, to just put your disbelief on hold for a moment, right? Consider consider a universe where God did create it, and then on the flip side, consider, okay, if there is no God, then what is going on? How is this working, right? So I think that that's a useful ability. Not that you're actually convincing yourself of either way, right? But just being able to step outside your own head and to put yourself as best you can into someone else's perspective.
Yeah, St. Paul did that. I don't know if you remember when he said, if Christ did not rise from the dead, then, our faith is in vain, or something like that. Okay. So he's going through an exercise like, okay, so if Christ didn't rise from the dead, what are the implications of that? Well, we should just eat, drink, and be merry, because for tomorrow we die, and there's no there's no reason to deprive ourselves of sleep and to put ourselves in harm's way with our enemies, and to love our enemies, and to do all the hardships that we're doing if there's no resurrection. So St. Paul was able to put himself in the shoes of the non-believer. And like you said, I think I agree with you for the most part that people aren't stupid, and they're not willfully ignorant in that way where you just stubbornly believe something because even though you know it's wrong. I mean, there are some people that might do that, but what is the point? You have to, at the end of the day, you're stuck with yourself. You have to wake up in the morning and be motivated to live your life. And how can you do that if you're living a lie and a delusion, and you're claiming as truth something that you yourself know is not true? So I think we have to give the benefit of the doubt to people that they are sincere, right? This is a word that gets thrown around a lot among different Christian communities, where they're saying, oh, well, he's a Catholic, but he's a sincere Christian and he sincerely believes in the Eucharist and that, so we'll give him a pass. Or from the Catholic perspective, oh yeah, she's a Protestant, but she's very sincere in her faith. It's sort of a little bit condescending, right? It's bless her heart, she does believe what she believes. And so it can be a bit condescending in that way. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's hard to live a lie. It's hard to, even if it's adultery or something like that, you got your nice wife and kids, and then you got your whores on the side, and part of you really, really enjoys that lifestyle. You can guess which part and where it's located. But the other part of you up higher feels guilty and is wondering, am I going to get caught? And how long can I sustain this lifestyle? And so on and so forth. And if you read about criminology, most criminals, what do they want most in life? They want to get caught. They want to get caught. They want justice to be served. Why? Because it's just too much. It's too much of a burden, too much of a headache. So maybe talk a little bit about your background in psychology. Do you know a lot about the human mind and the way we rationalize and the way we can have delusions and our cherished delusions and these sorts of things? Have you studied psychology at all?
I haven't. I took Psych 101 freshman year, but no, I'm not a psychologist. There's a few things you said there that I would want to respond to, but
go for it.
I think in the most part we're in agreement. So like the Aaron Raw in me wants to point out that there are those fundamentals who are willfully ignorant, and that's so like I don't believe in free will, right? Like I believe that we're products of our environment, and so it takes a certain. Everyone has different intelligences. It takes a certain level of intelligence to seek out intelligence, right? So like if you're a certain sort of indoctrinated or you're a certain sort of just uneducated if through no fault of your own, I don't see being willfully ignorant as necessarily a choice, right? Like yeah, they're being willfully ignorant. They're those. I know that I know that I know that I know that that there's a God. Those kind of people, I'm not convinced that they have the capability, the intellectual, rigor to be able to look at it as an academic proposition instead of something more akin to like a personal identity. Right. Does that make sense? Like religion's more deeply entwined with our emotions and our culture and our community, right? It's not just a philosophical enterprise.
Yeah, of course. I don't know if you're aware of the fact I interviewed Aaron Ra twice. Do you know that?
I do. I was going to watch that before this. I didn't get a chance. So I'm
definitely going to you should watch it.
I was looking through the comments. I saw everyone was saying Aaron won. But
of course.
Check it out.
What would you expect?
Or Aaron, I should say. Sorry, Aaron Ra.
Yeah. I love him.
I'll definitely go check it out. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of him.
He's my absolute favorite atheist of all time. Just because he's so cool, he's so warm, he's so lovable, and he's such a nice guy. He was very generous and cooperative with me. Even though, when we're talking metaphysics and philosophy, I think he's completely out of his league. He has no idea what he's talking about. But he's cute. He's cute and cuddly. And I just have a real warm spot in my heart for him. But he's wrong. I mean, this is the thing you were talking about, belief in God as if it's some sort of entirely faith-based thing. It's not. It's a philosophical certainty. Like, it's not a moral certainty only. It's a philosophical certainty like 1 + 1 = 2. There is an uncaused first cause, period. There is one and only one. It's the necessary being, that than which nothing greater can be conceived, etc., etc. It's like there's no escape. There's no plan B. There's no other alternative. There's no option. So it's not... it's just that I believe that I believe that I believe that I believe. No, it's like, just use reason, just use pure reason. It's dogma of the church also that we can know by the light of natural reason, without recourse to faith, without recourse to any faith-based beliefs. We can know with certainty that God exists. So that's maybe what we should spend the rest of our time here talking about, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, you don't think I'm in agreement, do you?
Obviously not. If you agreed, you would be a monotheist. You would be no. I never said it was self-evident. I never said it was self-evident, and the church doesn't teach that it's self-evident, and the philosophers don't teach that it's self-evident. It's indirect. We need to look at the creation to see the creator. We need to see the contingent in order to see the necessary. We need to see the finite in order to glean the infinite. But it's not a lot of intellectual horsepower required. I'm in agreement with you. I'm in complete agreement with you that there aren't a lot of people that actually care to ask these questions about metaphysics, right? It's a very small minority of us that have the luxury to take the time to read a book in our air-conditioned homes where there's a fridge full of food and drinkable tap water at the flick of a switch or whatever. You know what I mean? Not a lot of us have that, but it's a privileged position that we are in the first world, and of course, more people I think today than ever have access to that sort of luxurious lifestyle. But my point is that even if you have that, I mean, I know plenty of people that have a lot more money and leisure time than I have, but they just don't care. Like your father, he just doesn't care. So that's a bit of a problem, and God's going to have to work his magic in other more subtle and nuanced ways. But let's talk about the uncaused first cause and what you think are viable alternatives to that.
Yeah, sure. So
hit me with your best shot.
Well, so again, just to parrot Aaron Raw, I mean, when you say creation requires a creator, I mean that is circular reasoning.
No, the creator does not require a creator. That would be absurd.
No, calling it creation, right? Like, yeah, creation needs a creator, but like, does reality need a realtor? Is the little atheist jingo? Let's
silly, not argue.
Right?
Let's not argue about words. Let's talk about why there's something and not nothing, and let's talk about contingency and cause and effect. If you want to throw out cause and effect, the principle of cause and effect, the principle of proportionate causality, the principle of sufficient reason, if you want to throw out everything that's axiomatic to the natural sciences, congratulations. You've deprived yourself of the scientific method and of natural science. But most atheists want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have the principle of sufficient reason, but deny it. And they want to have free will, but deny it. And they want to have all these things, but deny it, right? So let's just focus in on the uncaused first cause, or the necessary being, whichever angle you want to take, and try to come up with something that's reasonable, that is an alternative to having one and only one necessary being. And the only thing you can propose is something that's not necessary, something that's contingent. And so if you believe in the principle of cause and effect, where are you going to go with that? You're going to go to circular reasoning every time. Right?
So again, like, if we call it creation,
we won't call it creation. We're not going to call it creation.
So what I'm asking is, do we know that there was a first cause?
Yes, we do. We know with absolute certainty, because the alternative is a violation of the principle of causality, where we have, contrary to reason, we have every effect preceding its own cause. That just cannot be, unless you're willing to throw out science, natural sciences. I don't think you're willing to do that.
I'm not convinced you understand science, but
well, I studied physics. I worked at the Canadian Space Agency. I've got my name on a paper in quantum physics. I think I know a little something about physics, and physics is the natural science par excellence, right?
Okay, well, so which physical model posits a first cause that you're?
It's not the domain. Not the domain of natural science to do metaphysics. It's not within the domain. It's not within the purview of natural science. The natural sciences are good, but they have limits. The natural sciences have limits, and they don't talk about metaphysics. They assume as axiomatic things like the principle of sufficient reason, the principle of proportionate causality, the principle of cause and effect, or principle of causality. They take as axiomatic all of these principles that you seem to be willing to just jettison, right? But if you jettison them, you will be jettisoning the natural sciences. That's why I brought natural science into the conversation, because that's what's at stake for the atheist. Okay, so we need to be very serious about this. Are you serious about your atheism? Because if you're serious about your atheism, welcome to monotheism. Period. Like, you got literally nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, unless you want to just hide behind the complexity of the quantum realm, the complexity of relativity, and all these sorts of things. If you want to run and hide, there are plenty of hiding spaces, but I'm pretty good at ferreting out the atheist from their hiding spaces, because there aren't that many things to examine. We examine cause and effect, and we examine contingency, and we arrive necessarily at one and only one necessary being. And that's the God that I worship. That's the God that your mom worships. That's the God that your sister worships. all the Jews, Muslims, and Christians worship that God, that necessary being. So let's talk about it. Let's get to the heart of the matter here.
Yeah, well, you're jumping around a bit. So if we could go back to talking about the first cause, right?
Yes.
So like I asked you, how do we know that there's a first cause?
Because the alternative, we do a reduction to absurdity. We do a reduction to absurdity test. We say, let's say there is no uncaused first cause. What does that mean? What does it mean if there's not a first cause that's uncaused? What does it mean? It means an infinite regress or a circle. But an infinite regress is a circle. So rejecting the uncaused first cause means a circle of causality, where the effect precedes its own cause. We have to reject that if we're going to keep the natural sciences, period. Therefore, there is one and only one uncaused first cause. Therefore, there is God, because that is my God.
So I think we're in agreement that uncaused first cause is nonsensical.
No.
Right?
No. It's not nonsensical.
Okay, how does that make sense? Because that seems to me, it seems directly contradictory.
No, it's subsistent being. It's subsistent being that has its reason for its being in itself. Subsistent being has the reason for its being in itself, not in another. This is the principle of sufficient reason. Everything has its reason for being in itself or in another. And those two categories, in itself, the necessary being, and in another, the contingent being, they're the only two categories of being, contingent and necessary. And you cannot have just a whole bunch of contingent being. You need one and only one necessary being, the ground of being, right? Whose essence is existence.
Well, but that's what we're debating, right?
No, we're not debating it. It's you have no alternative. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. There is no alternative to that. If you want to say it turtles all the way down, it just doesn't hold water. It's circularity. It's because it's putting the effect before its own cause. You can do it.
How?
You can do it, but you'll be jettisoning rejecting and abandoning the natural sciences, which I don't think you want to do. Cause and effect. Because cause and effect, the principle of cause and effect says that the effect never precedes its own cause. That's the principle of causality. But if you want to have, you do agree with it?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Okay, so if you agree with the principle of causality, welcome to monotheism, because you will have to admit that there's one and only one uncaused first cause, a necessary being whose essence is existence. It's subsistent being. Because if you say anything else, if you do a reduction to absurdity and say, let's say that's not the case, what you're stuck with is only contingent beings, only a chain of cause and effect, which is always necessarily circular. Therefore, the effect precedes the cause, which violates...
How does it become circular?
I'm sorry?
How does it become circular? Right? Like, I'm imagining like an infinite timeline, right?
Yeah.
And like, at what point does an infinite timeline wrap around on itself?
Well, because there's everything at there are infinite instances of every configuration of matter energy. Infinite instances. Yeah. So you and I, you're one person, I'm another person, and in my worldview, and in the only sane and rational worldview, monotheism, there's only one instance of you, there's only one instance of me. But with an infinite regressive cause and effect, there are infinite instances of you and infinite instances of me and infinite instances of our parents. And
Does that follow?
How could it not be the case? Do a reduction to absurdity. Say it's not the case, and then show me the logical implications of that.
Well, let me clarify your position, right? It sounds to me like what you're saying is, given enough time, everything will happen, or something like that, right? Like given an infinite amount of time, this entire timeline is going to like repeat itself.
It has to, because it's a finite world. If you want to say it's not a finite world, you want to say it's an infinite, there's infinite matter, then it's even more circular. It's even more circular. Because then you have infinite instances of you right now and at every moment in time. If the matter of the universe is infinite and not finite, then we have an even more circular violation of the principle of causality.
I didn't claim that. I have no idea whether there's infinite matter or not.
Right. Well, whether there is or isn't, in both cases, we have circular reasoning for the atheist, right? So it's untenable, therefore you have to reject it, and therefore you have to admit, painful as it is, because of your little cherished sins that you love so much that you want to hold on to. I'm assuming here, I'm presuming, excuse me, forgive me. I am presuming because I'm a human being and I know human nature from firsthand experience. I know that I have my own cherished little sins, and, you know, I resent God for wanting me to be a good boy when I want to be a naughty little boy. So, forgive me if I presume maybe you're some kind of saint that doesn't sin. But, you know, the idea is that you don't have a choice. If you're going to use reason, unfettered and unclouded by your selfishness, your selfish desires, and your self-centered nature, your fallen nature, I would say, then you have to admit there's one and only one uncaused first cause. Now, let's just say, just for the sake of argument, let's just say for fun that you go off quietly and you think about it and you say, oh, geez, David was right. There is one and only one uncaused first cause. What am I going to do? I believe he's right. This is just hypothetical. Now, you don't necessarily have to worship it because you haven't understood that it's the source of every perfection, the source of every good, and that it's infinite. It itself is infinite in every pure perfection, meaning every perfection that is better to have than not to have. So you don't need to worship the first cause, but you can take that first baby step and believe that it is philosophically untenable to reject the uncaused first cause. So you don't have to go straight into explicit monotheism, but you're well on your way, and you will soon discover, if you examine the uncaused first cause, that it is necessarily infinite in every perfection. So it is a little bit of a slippery slope. It's a dangerous game. And if your mind is open, and you did claim at one point that your mind is open, and that you do love the truth, if that's the case, I think you're on your way, you know, given the fact that you're an intelligent young person. I think you have what it takes. And I'm cheering for you and I'm praying for you.
I appreciate the compliments. I want to get back on track if we can. I think you're jumping around a bit again, and you have made a number of assumptions during this call. I just want to point out, when you say things like, you know, there's only one logical position, or, you know, those sort of gaslighting statements, I don't think that that's conducive to the conversation.
Okay, show me an alternative.
I'm genuinely trying to see. So let's get back to the circular reasoning thing, because
Yes.
I'm still not seeing how an infinite timeline is circular, right? So the way I see it is, forget infinite matter. I don't know about that, right? But let's just consider an infinite timeline for a moment,
Sure.
right?
Actual infinity.
In an infinite timeline, is there a first cause or no?
No.
No. Okay. So there's no uncaused first cause in an infinite timeline, right?
Yeah, according to your, because we're starting.
Every cause is preceded by, or sorry, every effect is preceded by its cause, right?
Yeah. I just want to say I want to clarify something for posterity.
Mm-hmm.
For posterity. It's so silly to say. But anyway, there are theologians and great geniuses of the church who say that from a Catholic perspective, God could have had a co-eternal material universe. And so that would seem to imply an infinite chain of cause and effect, co-eternal with God. Okay, I reject that. St. Thomas Aquinas seemed to think that it was possible. I don't think he proved it per se, but I think he thought it was possible. So out of respect
to be clear, I reject the infinite timeline too. I'm just, you know, like I said, being able to entertain hypotheticals is really important in these sorts of conversations. I'm willing
to entertain the possibility that God could have a co-eternal material creation with an actual infinite timeline. I'm willing, for the sake of argument, to accept that. I do not believe it. I will never become convinced of it unless, you know, on this side of heaven anyway.
Don't say never.
I won't say never.
That's being
I won't say
closed-minded.
never. I won't say never. I mean, I have a great respect for the theologians and the saints who have speculated that it could be the case. I just don't see it. I just think it's philosophically untenable. That's my position. And I mean,
Do you want to know why I don't believe it?
Yes, I do.
So I don't believe it because the science hasn't shown evidence for it. Right?
How could it?
So maybe this can transition into my sort of philosophy, right?
Yes.
So I'm a naturalist, and I see that as being necessarily a pragmatic stance, as opposed to some sort of idealism or something, or substance dualism, or I don't know. Yeah, so suffice it to say, I think that everything that exists is material, and that what we can say exists is what are basically the collection of our best scientific theories, right? So when it comes to looking at like what kind of metaphysical possibilities there are for like space and time and matter, right? Like my starting place is I don't know on any of these things. Like I don't know if existence is eternal. I don't know, all these big sort of metaphysical questions. I try and start from what we can directly observe, right, and then work outwards. So like the famous "I think, therefore I am."
Yep. Love it.
Well, and then that was kind of corrected to like I experience, right? Like there's something like what it's like to be there. There's some sort of consciousness, right? Therefore existence, right? And then I think it's Hume who pointed out that relies on the validity of reason, right? That reason has to be reasonable for for either of those to work. So when I look at how I build up understanding, how knowledge forms, it does start from direct conscious experience, right? That's how we build that's what empiricism means, right? To observe it, and not just that you observe it, but that like other people observe it too, right? Because we know that we know that hallucinations are a thing, right? So and from there, right, from what we directly observe, we can start to build abstractions from that.
Can I interrupt?
You want to? Yeah.
Yes, I need to interrupt you. I need to interrupt you because have you heard of naive realism?
I haven't.
Okay, that's where you assume that there's an external material world and there are other beings, okay, other persons, like you're a person, and that you just assume without any philosophical basis. And I'm not saying a basis doesn't exist, because it does, but you haven't understood or grappled with the philosophical basis, and it's just taken on as an assumption. Hey, world seems to be real, seems like, hey, I get up in the morning and go to school, and people have opinions, and we talk, and we share ideas, and they have a will, and sometimes there's a battle of the wills, and this is the world I'm navigating, and isn't it interesting? Wow. But that underlying assumption, which is untested and unexplored in the naive realist, is, well, obviously it's real. I mean, come on, look at how real it looks, and look at, I'm talking to you right now. Isn't this real? So you need to dig a bit deeper. You need to dig a bit deeper. You need to examine the philosophical underpinnings of your worldview, the metaphysical underpinnings. How is it possible to test your sense perceptions in order to have confidence that they correspond with an external world and other people? How can you possibly set up an experiment? You can't. That's why Hard-Solipsism, which I passed through as an atheist, was my saving grace. That's what saved me from the pits of hell, because I realized that being, just like when you're on your psychotropic drugs, you have this sense that, wow, being just is. I have this godlike perspective. Yeah, go into that, dive into that, because that is a little taste of eternity. That's a taste of life per se being itself, which you're participating in. as a finite creature, I would say. But if you fall into hard-solipsism, you would say, I am, right? I am, period. And that's where I was as a hard-solipsist. I thought I was God, and that this is just an entertainment. It's a video game or whatever you want to call it, but there's no material substance whatsoever. And there is absolutely no philosophical experiment, or much less an empirical experiment, that could ever justify belief in these alleged sense perceptions that you have. So you need to go deeper in your metaphysical examinations. I'm begging you.
Well, if I might respond.
No, just go deeper now. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
So you said a lot there. I'm trying to respond to the last point.
The senses. It's all about the sense perceptions. How do you validate the sense perceptions?
Yeah. So right. So like hard-solipsism, right? I would say that itself is an assumption, right? Like they're both assumptions, right? Like you're either going to assume that other beings are real, or you're going to assume that it's all in your head, right? Like either way, those are assumptions, right? Or you could say like I don't know either way.
No. The cogito of René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. It's not I think, therefore you are. No. The whole point of Descartes' exploration is hard-solipsism, and his only reason why he escapes, the only reason why he escapes hard-solipsism is just an offhand shrugging of the shoulders and a waving of the hands. Well, of course God is real, and of course he's good, and he's not an evil demon, and Okay, it's not a philosophical...
You're conflating terms here. You're confusing hard-solipsism with recognition of existence. It's not the same. Hard-solipsism is when you don't believe that other beings exist, that you think you're the only being.
Yeah, the only being, and there's no material universe.
That doesn't follow from, I think, that. So like you can't get from I think therefore I am to only I think therefore I am. Right? It doesn't follow logically that therefore nothing else thinks.
No, but listen to me. I can listen very carefully now, and think about this for the days and weeks and months and years to come. Think about this. I can deny your existence. It's not irrational for me to do that, but for me to deny my own existence is irrational. There's a difference. There's a category difference between me denying my existence and me denying your existence. Because you might be an illusion. Your pixel's on a screen right now. There's AI that can do you better than you do you. Okay, so it's not irrational.
Can we let's find some common ground here. We both recognize that everything that we experience, I'm not going to say that is, I'm going to say everything that we experience happens in consciousness, right? Like the sensation, all of the sense perception, your thoughts, right? Everything that's going on in your world is happening to you, arising out of nowhere and entering into this. I mean, when you enter meditative states, it's much more visceral, right? It's like there's no specific location in consciousness. You're not some homunculus inside your head or behind your eyeballs, right? It's like we can agree that consciousness like exists in a singular state. Like there's only one observer, right? For any mind, there's only ever going to be one observer, because you're either something is being experienced or it's not, right? So that necessarily creates one ego, right? At least when we're talking about like humans. Now, I don't know if there's other sorts of minds capable out there. That's a sort of metaphysical navel gazing that I'm trying to avoid. But like, yeah, so we agree, and that's kind of like a Buddhist, like a very ancient, understanding is like the singularity of consciousness, right? But then it sounds like what you're trying to take from that recognition is this idea that that's all that there is.
Well, listen very carefully again. I want you to know and understand that I am 100% in agreement with you that hard-solipsism is a false worldview. That's not my point. My point is not that hard-solipsism is true. My
How do you
point,
know that it's false?
I know with 100% rational certainty that hard-solipsism is false. I know it because I can do it.
How?
Well, it's just using logic, right?
Yeah.
There are only two possibilities: a reduction to absurdity.
Oh.
Either God is God, or
sorry, you
I
cut
am
out
God.
there.
Either.
You start over. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Just let me check my settings here.
Yeah.
Talk amongst
I
yourselves.
don't know if I missed anything.
Are you enjoying the conversation so far?
Oh, are we getting positive feedback?
Meta.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you, my guest.
Oh, yes. I know this is good. I mean, I kind of wanted to dig in, like, and go a little bit slower with some of the concepts we're bringing.
Can you do me
but I think it's good.
Can you do me a favor? Can you watch this video that I just sent you? It's really quick. How do I do this? I sent you a link in Google Meet. Can you see the link and can you follow the link? Can you play that on your phone? Is that too hard?
I think I can.
Oh, don't watch that one. That's the wrong one. I sent you the wrong one. Just give me 1 second. While you figure out how to do that. So I sent you the wrong one. I don't know why I sent you the wrong. Here it is. This is the one. Okay. And I'm going to get you to, it's very entertaining, and it's also my proof that hard-solipsism is false. Okay. So I'm going to send you the link now. This is the proper link, the second one. Okay. A shorter one.
Yeah. Why don't, so tell you what, you sound like you're a really compassionate and, considerate and honest person. Like I like being here. I like being on this channel.
Thank you.
I like finding theists who are, open to having good talks. So,
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'll check out the video and we can do another talk. And
okay.
Maybe we can make that theme
about
hard-solipsism, right? We could just have, because I like to stick to one topic.
Yeah.
That was what Nathan accused me of, was jumping around too much.
Nah.
So I'm gonna try and work on that.
Sure. So you can lead the conversation. I'll be less pushy and annoying, and I appreciate your kind words to me. I mean, I'm a little bit autistic, not officially, but just sort of amateur diagnosis from my friends. So if I'm socially awkward with you, please forgive me.
No, it strikes me as you being very excited about your position, right? And I like seeing that. But I'm happy that you're confident, because that tells me that, like, maybe you've got a lot of good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it also it's also a bit of a red flag in that, like, okay, how open is this guy really to thinking about his own positions, right? Has he really questioned hard-solipsism? Is he sure? These are really big philosophical topics, right? People have been thinking about this for thousands, if not longer, of years. And so I want
those are fighting words. There. You're attacking my young Earth creationism. Just kidding.
Right. Yeah.
Let's not go there. We won't go there.
Yeah. Well, so it's curious because, like, you've had Aaron Raw on, right? And like
Aaron.
I mean, Aaron. Gosh. He's got the series, the foundational falsehoods of. Have you watched that? I mean,
I've watched bits and pieces of it. It's just so easy to debunk all his stuff. Like, are we really going to go on a tangent again, or are we going to come?
I hope not. I'm just curious, like, how much you've looked into that topic. Like, have you studied evolution at a university?
You should read this book. Can you see what I got on the screen?
I can, yes. Yeah. That reminds me, I've got another little saying, which is, I don't know who said this. Maybe someone in the chat can find out. your metaphysics must follow from your physics, right? To do otherwise would be to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, that's why I
So
started.
that gets into my naturalist worldview, but
I started with you with, hey, did you know that there's a difference between the contingent and the necessary? And did you know there's something called the principle of cause and effect? This is not wacky, weird, out there stuff. This is the foundation, the axiomatic assumptions of physics. I studied applied physics. This is not ivory tower stuff. I worked in the Canadian Space Agency putting satellites into orbit. I worked in quantum physics with gallium arsenide arsenic lasers. This is concrete, hands-on stuff. Hands-on.
It's interesting. I think we disagree about the axioms of science. Maybe we can get into some of that.
Yeah, because all of the axioms upon which the natural sciences are built are philosophical axioms. They're philosophical principles.
I disagree. So I actually think that I view the more fundamental level below epistemology as axiology, right? And I see these axioms not as social constructs, not as philosophical constructs, but rather naturally evolved processes, right? So that's kind of get into.
But where does
I don't view philosophy as having a prized position.
Neither do I. Neither do I.
I put science first.
I put science first. I put science first too, but I put capital science first. My hierarchy of the sciences is that which is outlined in the Catholic faith, which is God first. He's science, big S science, knowledge itself. Okay, don't laugh. Knowledge itself. And then you laughed. I told you not to laugh. You insulted me. You insulted me. Anyway, so we've got God, the big S science, and then we have theology, and then we have philosophy. So philosophy is way down on the list, number 3. And then we have the natural sciences, number 4. And then we have all the flaky soft sciences. Okay, so that's my hierarchy.
I think I would agree with you. I think if I had your perspective, right, I think I would agree, right? It would start with a few axioms like God exists, right? And whatever accompanying axioms are unscrappable, like God is good, and then these sorts of things. And then you have whatever abstractions you can make surrounding that, right? And that builds up your theology.
Yeah.
Right. And then above that, so how do you build your philosophy? I'm curious. Is it like epistemology, then ontology,
no.
and
ontology
then ethics and sorts of things?
Ontology first.
Well, how do you know what is until you know
it? It starts with me and my experience. I am. I know that I am, and when I deny that I am simultaneously affirming that I am. Therefore, we reject the denial of self, and I have to affirm that I am. So this is what Descartes was all about. No, I mean not everything, but that was the core of his. I
would differentiate. I would differentiate ontology, and the more fundamental a priori sense of being. Right.
Yeah, what's the difference?
I think ontology is just the linguistic discussion of what is, right? And like what objects or what things
so I started then with an existential experience. Does that make you feel better?
I would put that lower down I would put that frankly, I would put that below God, right? Like I don't have God as an axiom.
Yeah, but I came to God.
I have my tier.
I came to God through my Hard-Solipsism. Remember that. So it all started with my existential experience.
We can put that aside. I understand. So let's just go with me here, right? Let's put that sort of intuitive. You don't even need to say what it is to know that it is, right? Let's put that at the bottom, okay? Because we can both, that's a starting point we can both agree on.
Okay.
Right? Like let's put consciousness at the very bottom of our system of knowledge.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. It's even beneath ontology for you, right? Okay. Got it.
Right, yeah. So it's beneath all of that, right? And then above that, before you get to, so I put epistemology below ontology, because in order to know what is, you have to know how you know things. And then below epistemology is axiology, right? And so, like one of the postmodernist critiques is that there's an infinite number of ways you can interpret something, right? So like there's an infinite number of valid models of reality, right? And they can vary, right? But you could technically say that they're all true in some sense, right?
You could say they're coherent, but you can't say that they all correspond with reality, because there's that correspondence
right.
theory.
So how are we going to categorize them, right? Yeah, exactly. Like how do we
sort them,
differentiate and sort them? Yeah. And so the through line that I see, that even though there's an infinite number of possible minds, all minds fall into this spectrum, and it's a spectrum based on their adherence to what's called the Big Four operational criteria. Okay, so the Big Four of science, and in fact, there's a visual aid that would help. Can you Google something real quick?
Yeah.
So Google, his YouTube channel is King Crocoduck. If you just go to his channel, I think it's like one of the newer videos. It's nuking social constructionism, and he has a diagram in there somewhere that breaks down the Big Four.
What's a keyword I can search within his channel? I can search for a keyword.
Can you search Big Four? Is that
four spelled out? Oceans of ignorance. Is science a social construct? The brief timeline of everything. Big. I'll type in the word big. Big.
Yeah, I should be able to get it here.
Big.
Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, I've got them. If you want to pull them up too, so you can take a look at them, that'd be helpful.
What's
so
the
the first one?
Is there a name of an episode I should be looking at, or?
It's nuking social constructionism. The second one, or any of them really. If you just go into the video, timestamp 652.
Okay, 652. Here we go. Is it a triangle pyramid?
Are you on the second video?
I'm on episode 1, I think. 1 of 3.
Okay, let me go to that one and see where I can find the picture.
It's got Russian subtitles.
16.
16 minutes?
Yeah. Or he doesn't have them all on there at 16. They're all up at 18, 20.
Okay, I see science, mythology, philosophy, ontology, and epistemology. Is that with a big circle?
No. So it'll say the Big Four operational criteria.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah,
Predictive accuracy, precision, explanatory efficiency, etc.
Yeah, optimal flexibility and rational coherence. So these are the Big Four operational criteria by which we can judge all models of reality, right? Basically all knowledge, right? Like whether it's a human, whether it's a machine, a Roomba, doesn't matter. Models can be put onto this, can be measured with this criteria. Now my headphone just died, so give me just a sec. I'm gonna swap my earbuds real quickly here.
Sure. Yes. So we have predictive accuracy / precision, explanatory efficiency, optimal flexibility, rational coherence. Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I guess my speaker is working. Yeah, so these 4 axioms, what he argues in this video is that they're not socially constructed, that these axioms are themselves natural. All right. So like before there was ever humans, before there was ever monkeys, before there was ever complex life, the very simple self-replicating systems obeyed these axioms, right?
basically that these axioms are selected for by the evolutionary process.
Wow.
Now, I understand you don't accept evolution, right? So we're gonna be in serious disagreement here.
Right. But listen carefully to me. Number 4, rational coherence. Rational coherence before any living being. So you're saying that there was always a mind, a rational mind, even before life. So we got life from non-life. Good luck explaining that one to me without violating the principles of metaphysics. And then you want to say there was always a rational coherence. There was always reason. There was always a mind, a rational mind, even before life came into the cold, dark, dead universe, right?
Yeah. So when he says rational coherence, what that means is just internal consistency, right? So a model isn't contradicting itself. It's not saying that something both is and isn't.
No, but there were no models. There were no model makers before life.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to point out, right? So like who's thinking about the logic, right? How does the logic exist in a system that doesn't have consciousness? Is what we're trying to figure out, right? And what's rationally coherent about, let's say, a plant's model of reality, right? Because that's a good example that isn't conscious, right? A plant has a model of reality, you could say.
Well, a plant is alive. A plant is alive. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it has a certain sensory inputs, right? It doesn't have a brain, but it receives
stimulus,
data, you could say, right?
Data for sure.
And it does sort of internal computation, right? And then there's some sort of output, right? And like the most obvious example would be that it grows towards the sun.
Yeah.
Right. Most plants can orient themselves. So like what's rationally coherent about that model is that the plant doesn't go both left and right. Right.
Yeah, but it's rational only in retrospect, because when we look back at a cold, dead universe, you're saying there's no God, there's no mind there that's rationally checking the coherence. It's only in retrospect. Like once the humans come on the scene, then we have reason, and then we can look in retrospect. But we don't even need to go there. We can talk about the first 3, which all presume the validity, the universal validity of the principle of causality. And if you accept the universal validity of the principle of causality, congratulations, you are a de facto monotheist. Okay? Because
I disagree.
Right, I know you disagree.
Well, I know you disagree. And entails that. No. So we can set aside whether it leads to monotheism, right? What I'm disagreeing with is that that you get the principle of causality from these axioms, right? Like there's no theory of causality, right? Causality is not a well-known, like we're still curious about that. We still don't really understand.
No, but listen to me. If you're talking about making predictions, you are, I'm sorry, but you are presuming as axiomatic assumption that we live in a well-ordered universe, period. End of discussion.
I disagree. So
okay, so you can disagree. You can disagree, but you're rejecting the principle of causality because you're saying that there are uncaused effects. Is that what you're going to say?
No, what I'm saying is that that's not actually an axiom, because basically that itself is an evolved process, right?
But did it evolve in a well-ordered way? If so, welcome to monotheism. If it didn't, goodbye science. Goodbye science.
Yeah, so the world is both like ordered and chaotic, right? Like there's some things. Like there's just some things stay the same and some things change. Agreed.
You believe in you believe in randomness, true randomness, uncaused effects. Because otherwise, your chaos is just the well-ordered.
I don't
product.
know, but
the chaos is just another well-ordered, interesting, but well-ordered part of the big, well-ordered machine. You can't have part of the universe being uncaused and the rest of it being well-ordered.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right? It's all the cosmos, which means well-ordered universe. The cosmos is well-ordered from top to bottom. And there's no part of our universe. I challenge you to find any scientific paper that says this effect is uncaused. I challenge you. And it never
David,
happens.
I'm not saying that. I need you to listen. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that, gosh.
Gather your thoughts. Predictive. I want to talk about the predictive accuracy and precision. Predictive. That word predictive. What does that mean? It means it's well ordered and the principle of cause and effect is universally valid.
I remember what I was going to say. So you're conflating order and chaos, whatever that means, with cause and effects. Like let's get clear here, okay? When I say some things change and some things don't, I mean, like, if you just look at your room right now, there's some things that are not moving, right? And then there's some things that are moving.
They're all moving. Everything's moving.
Well, but not everything looks like it's moving, correct?
Who cares what it looks like? I mean, take some more.
That's what I'm asking.
Take some more.
I'm asking a yes or no question. Is there both moving and non-moving stuff in your room?
No, everything's moving in the created contingent.
As you see it,
everything's moving. Everything's moving. I studied physics. I've seen things up close in microscopes and electron microscopes. I know things are moving everywhere.
I feel like you're being
and the whole planet
intentionally difficult.
The whole planet is moving. Everything is moving. Are you trying to...
I know that, David. I'm trying to get you to just visualize like something just sitting, like just visualize a glass of water sitting on a table.
Okay. You're talking in very like mundane, non-philosophical terms and without being scientifically, technically correct. You're just saying, okay, I'm not moving, and now I'm moving, and now I'm not. Like that kind of colloquial sense, the colloquial sense. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So as we live our lives, right, that's what we see. Like the sun moves across the sky, right?
Yeah.
And yet, assuming you don't move or you don't walk around the surface, right, the rest of the surroundings are not going to move, right? As long as you're not walking around, the tree that's next to you isn't going to move. So those are two distinct objects, right? Like we can say that the tree is unique and that it stays still, and then the sun is unique and that it moves around, right?
Okay.
Are you with me so far?
I'm with you. I'm following, trying to see where you're going.
Okay. So because that there's different things happening, right, at different speeds in different ways, there is no principle of causality. Right? There is no scientific theory that says exactly how cause and effect works. We just observe cause and effect.
Yeah. Right? I never said there's a theory to explain how cause and effect works. It's an axiomatic, self-evident principle that cannot be violated, because to violate it is to contradict yourself. To say that an effect precedes its cause is just nonsense. That's why we reject it, and that's why we embrace this principle that we don't understand. Don't get me wrong. We don't understand cause and effect. We don't understand a grain of sand or a blade of wheat. We do not understand much of anything, right? So,
yeah, you can say that cause always
precedes the effect.
Precedes effect,
or is simultaneous with the effect.
You can't ever say that something is a cause or what it's affected. Like you can't identify in singularity because we can't even separate a single object, right? Like we get down into the matter and it falls apart on us.
This is why David Hume was confident with his constant conjunction. But then at the end of the day, when he went down to the pub, it's like, I just colloquially and naturally, intuitively and naively believe in cause and effect, but we can't prove it.
So this gets back to why I'm a pragmatist and how that differs from these sorts of ideal stances, right? Like I'm not coming from it from a position of like, okay, I'm going to accept this axiom of cause and effect, and then I'm going to go around and operate in the world. It's like, no, organisms were operating in the world long before anyone thought of cause and effect, right? And then this is a discovery that follows after the fact. So like, again, when we're talking about these big four operational criteria, basically life follows those criteria even without consciously thinking about it. You don't need a mind to have a model that's accurate and precise. You don't have to have consciousness. You don't have to have the philosophical axiom of cause and effect to be able to have a model that either works better or doesn't, right? And the ones that work better, again, under the evolutionary paradigm, get selected for, right? And so this basically the mind gets shaped by the process itself.
Yeah, I've got a very interesting question for you. Do you want to talk to me about something and I'll pretend to listen while I try to think of what my question is?
Oh yeah, if you don't have it, yeah.
It's a very important question, but I can't remember what it is. I don't want you to sit there in silence. So maybe just talk to me about whatever and pontificate on these things.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever.
I can just kind of give like a summary of like I think watching that video series, Nuking Social Constructionism would be helpful. I mean, he's rebuting or debunking the idea that science is a social construct, and that's not exactly what.
Thank you. I just remembered. Do you believe in do you believe in the laws of nature, so-called the laws of nature? F equals ma and all these sorts of things.
Well, that's not a law of nature. I mean, force equals mass times acceleration is it's a law, but it's not a law of nature.
Okay, the laws, the 3 laws of thermodynamics. They're called laws. They are laws. They were presented to me in school as laws.
Yeah, they're just not laws of nature. Like they've got specific, fields of application.
Okay, so the laws of thermodynamics, for example, good example. Do you believe they're universally valid? Yes or no? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
Yeah, so I mean, when you say universal, that makes me think you're talking metaphysics now.
No.
Right? And
in your materialistic
world, I mean, I can only go as far as what the empirical evidence shows, right? So as far as we can tell, that's how closed systems of mass and energy operate. Whether that's always the case or whether, there's usually always
exceptions.
Yeah, I was going to say
extenuating circumstances.
That's
because I'm gonna have to go away and think about your particularly pragmatic approach and how I can just force you to a corner where you're going to admit something damning to your worldview.
I'm hoping that there's problems in it. I mean, it's something that naturalists have been like. That's the naturalist position for the past century now, and there's a lot of famous philosophers in the philosophy of mind, like Daniel Dennett and whatnot, who are trying to figure out how consciousness can be a natural product. And there's a lot of holes. Like I always say, science is like a puzzle, right? A jigsaw puzzle. You might have really huge gaps, right? But as long as you've got the outline worked out, right? It's just a matter of filling in the pieces.
When this is more of a personal psychological question for you, a spiritual question. Okay, if you were to come to believe in the same God that I believe in, with all just the pure monotheistic classical theism God, without Christianity, without Judaism, without Islam, just monotheism, you came to believe in that God, would you love that God? Would you worship that God, adore that God as God with the reverence that is due to God alone? Yes or no?
Good question. I think that there's still too much nuance under that definition, right? Like classical theism, there's a few characteristics we can point out, right? Like simplicity, I'm blanking on the other one. These different characteristics. I don't think that really necessarily gives you a coherent definition. Like one of the problems I have with God is that he's supposed to be omniscient, right? So like, what does all-knowing mean exactly? Does it mean like in order to be all-knowing, do you have to know what it's like to be me?
Yeah,
or to know what it's like?
Of course.
So then in that case, in some tiny finite part of the infinite whole, I am God, right? And you are God. For sure. Like that's kind of the Buddhist, we're all one sort of philosophy. So
yeah, but the difference is that it's not over till the fat lady sings. It's an opportunity to be God or to be united with God. It's called theosis in theology. It's this process of dying to self, as Christ said, die to self and live in Christ. And so we need to...
That's what my acid trip felt like, for sure.
Yeah. Well, this is very important to appreciate these mystical, supernatural events, even if you don't believe in the supernatural yet, but there's something weird and there's something a little bit out there, and you just keep it in the back of your mind, like, well, when I was on drugs, I sort of had this mystical experience. Just respect that, keep it close to your heart. That, I think this is one of your strengths as a human being, is that you are seeking, you are open-minded, you want to know the truth, but you're scared about committing to a rigid system. I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. You're scared of some stupid rigid system, and you see everyone with their stupid religion, and they can't all be right, and maybe they're all wrong, right? But they definitely can't all be right. Like, if there's going to be a right one, it's going to be one. It's not going to be 6 of the 10 million religions. It's just going to be one. So I respect and I admire your pursuit of the truth. I think you're going about it the right way, rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to be Christian because that's what my friends and family do. No, that's no good. You have to seek the truth. You have to love the truth. And I think your approach is good. So I'm going to wrap it up here because I have to go. I made some brownies earlier and I really want to eat them. And there's
not pot brownies.
No psychedelics involved. Just sugar.
Well, David, thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. I'd love to hop on again.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Hard-Solipsism.
Yep.
Check out that video series. Let me know. Yeah. I mean,
send me the link.
So I put psychedelics and I put like mysticism and that under the naturalist paradigm. But if we can tear that down, then it'll be free game again.
Wow. I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah. I'm excited. So very nice to meet you. You're a really, really pleasant and generous, patient person, and kind, and I really appreciate meeting you. I feel the warmth, and
you're too sweet.
It's nice. So I look forward to seeing you again. You know how to book a slot, right? You just use that little app that I sent you the link for, and we'll definitely do it again soon, anytime you like. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll schedule one for maybe like a couple weeks out.
Yeah, for sure. Time. Anytime you like. So we'll talk very soon.
Sounds good.
Have a good evening. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.